Welcome everyone to this evening's virtual open house. We are here to talk all things wayfinding. So thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Megan Langell. I'm an engagement strategist with the public engagement and communications team with the RMWB. And before we get started, I want to humbly acknowledge that the land on which we live, learn, work, and play is Treaty 8 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Dene, and the unceded territory of the Métis. I would like to mention that tonight's recording is going to be available at rmwb.ca/wayfinding to be able to view at a later date. We have an exciting presentation here to talk all things wayfinding. So tonight's event will be recorded to be viewed at a later date and will be uploaded in the coming days. Two objectives, just to give you a background, and I'm going to say to my colleague to go to next slide, just to give a background in regards to the Wayfinding Project. But before I get to that, I did want to introduce our team members on the team today. Will Collins is joining us from the public engagement team. He is also a strategist with the communications and engagement team at the RMWB. He'll be supporting on the back end, as well as Susan is here from 818 Studios. They are the consultant with this project, and she will be leading the presentation once we get to that part. Next slide, Will. So just so for some background, there's two main objectives with the Wayfinding Project. First, there's a wayfinding strategy that we are working towards. That strategy will support with the guiding principles that we can utilize throughout the region. So from Fort Fitzgerald all the way down to Conklin, we'll be able to use these guiding principles for strategies for all wayfinding all throughout Wood Buffalo. The second would be implementing the downtown and waterfront plan. So once we have the strategy in place, we'll be actually able to implement a plan within a specific community, which is the downtown and waterfront plan, and be able to use those guiding principles into what an actual plan looks like. And then hopefully further in different opportunities, we can use it for different communities that are needing wayfinding strategies. So that's really what we're here to talk to you about tonight. It's what's wayfinding to you. We're really interested to hear different residents' perspectives, stakeholders, and Indigenous partners of what wayfinding means to them. To some people, it's very simple from getting point A to point B. For others, it's how do we create a culture or how do we implement our culture within the signage that represents us as a region. So wayfinding is a directional guide system for motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians to get around individually through communities and the region at large. And wayfinding can include numerous things, and we'll go into that into detail when Susan gets to her presentation, but it could include signs, banners, public art, landmark, historical buildings. It could include color schemes, lighting, and much more. So the community feedback is really important for us to be able to determine the wayfinding priorities for a region and residents' needs. Good evening, Etta. We're just starting the presentation. Thank you for joining us tonight. You're just on mute, but we're just getting through what the presentation looks like. Hi there.
Sorry I'm 2 minutes late.
No worries. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. And which, are you from a certain organization or just a resident?
I'm from WJS Canada, and I also sit on the RIC community committee.
Great. Is that the Community of Aging?
No, that's the regional inclusive.
Great.
Committee. Yeah.
Side. Great. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
No problem.
You're on mute there, Megan.
Oh, thank you, Will. So wayfinding can be numerous things to different people. So we're really wanting to determine, what that looks like for all residents in the region, as well as, what are the priorities, particularly when we go into creating the downtown and waterfront plan. We're really wanting to understand, destinations are different for different people, what should be prioritized, what landmarks should be highlighted within the wayfinding region. So public feedback is going to be instrumental in regards to creating a strategy and a downtown and waterfront plan that really represents the local community. And the project came to be with a recommendation from the Wood Buffalo Downtown Revitalization Committee. Wayfinding has been something that's been a conversation for numerous years with residents and community stakeholders and Indigenous partners, and how we can support better wayfinding for our community as well as a tourism aspect. So that's where the project derived from, was the recommendation from that council appointed committee. And here we are today talking about wayfinding. We are at the very beginning stages of engagement. We are in phase 1 that we started on June 22nd. This is just the research phase. So we're really trying to gain all that feedback and priorities, goals, ambitions, color schemes, what materials of signs should look like right now. So today's meeting is going to be a presentation that we'll get to very quickly. It's just going to go over a background of what wayfinding is, what it can mean for our community, why is it's important, and then we're going to go into questions. And Etta, it's going to be a intimate conversation, so we're really excited. We have some interactive questions to ask. So once we get to that section, we'll be able to ask some questions and just have really, really interesting conversations and be able to gain your perspective of what wayfinding should look like. Do encourage, if it's of interest, you can write in the chat, or you can feel free to ask questions, raise your hand, however it's easiest for you to participate. So without further ado, I'll get Will to go to next slide, and I will introduce Susan Zepedy, who's from 818 Studios with our consultant team for the Wayfinding Project. So I will flip it over to you, Susan.
Thanks, Megan. Hi. As Megan mentioned, my name is Susan. I'm a wayfinding consultant, and I'm working with the team here on this exciting project. We thought we would take you through a little bit about background of what is wayfinding and have that discussion, because sometimes it means different things to different people. So in short, in its narrow sense, wayfinding is knowing where you are and where you're going and how to get there. It can be accomplished through directional signage, like the ones shown on this slide, as well as other elements that will be discussed a little bit further. Wayfinding is often used as a component of placemaking. So next slide. What is placemaking? Placemaking is a design approach that is often used in creating public spaces. It expresses the community's identity and creates a sense of place. It refers to feelings and emotions that are experienced when a user is in the space. And placemaking projects reflect and magnify the identified sense of place. Wayfinding elements can be used in the entrance to this sense of place as well. Next slide. So when we talk about wayfinding, we have to always consider that wayfinding should be looked at from the perspective of a visitor who is not familiar with the area. It's easy to get to know a place once you've lived there for a long time and understand where everything is. But we do really have to look at it through the eyes of someone who has never been there before and make sure that it works for that person. In short, wayfinding is an information system that aids in navigation and orientation, and it also tells a visitor where they are and where they're going. it creates a better experience for a visitor as it takes away the confusion of navigating an area. You know where you are and where you're going. It also contributes to a sense of safety and well-being, especially as a pedestrian. If you've ever got lost in streets when you're traveling, you kind of understand that you might feel uneasy if you're not familiar with the place, you don't know where you are or where you're going. So it really does contribute to a sense of safety. Wayfinding systems typically include signage, but also work in conjunction with the landscape, with landmarks, art, and other visual cues. Another example of a city that uses landmarks in wayfinding would be the city of Rome, where they actually have axial cities or axial streets that surround the different landmarks like the Colosseum and the Vatican. They use this so that you know where you are based on which landmark you are near. Next slide. The benefits of wayfinding. We're just going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of wayfinding. Having an effective wayfinding system allows a visitor to make informed decisions. I always say you don't always notice a wayfinding system, but you definitely notice a lack thereof if you ever get lost. So wayfinding also helps to create a sense of destination and place. It makes you aware that you have arrived, you're there, you know where you are, and it can kind of make it a special place because whether it's through pageantry, banners, that sort of thing, you understand. It gives that sort of sense of impact. Wayfinding also helps people to explore. You may not have known there was a park, 3 blocks down the road if you weren't familiar with the area. It also, from a pedestrian or bicycle point of view, having consistent wayfinding allows someone not to have to stop and start all the time. If it's there in predictable places, then you don't have to get off your bike to figure out where you're going. It encourages multimodal exploration. Next slide. These are just a variety of sign types that are typical for a wayfinding program like this. We're just going to walk through really quickly the various different types of signage that you might use. First one's identification signs, so that can be anything that tells you a little bit about the area or the space. So it could be like a historical information sign. Then we have the regulatory signage, which is typical for rules and regulation, whether it's a park or how to use this space. We've got trailhead signage, which is when you're walking on a pathway, just letting you know what pathway you're on, and it might include some directions on it. There's identification signage, and identification signage can be anything from like a freestanding sign like shown here, where it's maybe identifying a building or a park. But an identification sign is also something like an elevator sign or a washroom sign. It simply just identifies where you are or what that space is used for. Orientation signage is typically, it lets you know exactly where you are standing at that moment and kind of the surrounding area. So it's often associated with a directory or perhaps a map. Then we have directional signage, both for vehicle and pedestrians. And this typically points or provides direction to a specific place. We also have gateway and monument signage, which is typically a larger scale type of sign, and it's typical to perhaps a new community. You've arrived in that community based on the gateway signage. And of course, we have street signs and pageantry and banners, which also could be included as part of the scope. Next slide. So I just want to talk a little bit about what makes an effective wayfinding program. So first, we talk about consistent branding. It's really important as it allows for instant recognition. You become familiar with what to expect from the signage system, and it also reinforces the identity of the space. Organization of information. An example, I don't know if people recall, but at the beginning of this presentation, there was a sign, it was a trail sign, and there was about 3 or 4 other smaller signs kind of tacked onto the front of it. So this is an example of when you look at this, you don't quite know where to look first. They all have sort of a different look and feel. You're not sure what the most important information is. So organization of information, sometimes signs do have a lot of information, but it's the way you organize them so people know the most important information to look at. Legibility, of course, is very important. So you can't have a sign on the side of the road that you're driving past at 50 kilometers an hour and have it not be legible. So it needs to be looked at from the intended viewing distance, whether that's a pedestrian or someone driving in a vehicle. Clear and concise and only contains relevant information. I think that's pretty straightforward, and I think it's effective to make sure that you only put on that sign that what needs to be said at that point. We have predictable. Now, predictable can be in the sense of information on the sign that you know what information to expect on that signage system, but also placement of the signage. So it should be expected that if you're going down the road and you've gotten directions to a specific place, that when you reach a point where you need to make a decision, it should be predictable that there's going to be another sign there telling you which way to turn. Accessible. It needs to be accessible for everyone, and that could be using universal symbols for people that don't necessarily speak the same language. Could be using tactile surfaces, making sure that if we're using a directory, that it can be reached from, if you are in a wheelchair, that it's at the right height for you. So, next slide. We're just going to go through a few slides just showing some other samples of wayfinding programs. So this one is from Whistler Village. It's a good example of showing a consistent color palette, consistent typography, materials. They're all different signs, but they have the same look and feel. They're from the same family. The second one in the center there is a really good example of information and making sure it's organized, because it does contain a lot of information, but the fact that it's color coded and sectioned off, it makes it much easier to digest the information that you need. Next slide. Here's another example, the town of Okotoks. This is a sign family that uses consistent typography, color use. The information on the sign might all be different, and they are different types of signs, but you know that they're part of the same family. Next slide. These are some examples of city wayfinding from the city of Pasadena. Again, we have consistent typography. It has used the similar icons throughout, but the difference here is that they've actually split up the city by different districts. So they're using color coding just to differentiate between the different districts. Next slide. Here's an example from the city of Hanover. Again, all different sign types, but using the same branding elements just to make it tie into a consistent family. Next slide. So in early June, we went up and did a site audit of the signage kind of in and around downtown, some surrounding areas, but for the majority, it was throughout the downtown area. And this is just sort of a sampling of what we saw. As you can see, there really isn't a lot of consistency when it comes to branding. So typography, colors, materials, everything has a very different look and feel. Next slide. So now we're going to get into the survey that we've put out, just trying to get input on different wayfinding aspects. We're looking for input, and we can go through the questions and just sort of have a little bit of conversation back and forth. So next slide. First question that we have is, what is important in wayfinding? So we've put together just sort of a list of things that might be important, and they're all probably important, but just want to get some feedback as what do you feel is most important?
I think that for a lot of the individuals that I serve and know in the community, art is important for community. Community members like to express themselves through their visual art. But also, I work in the disability sector, so I serve adults with disabilities, developmental disabilities mainly. And so accessibility is huge. And I know a lot of the adults in the disability, the developmental disability area, if the color coding of areas is helpful for them, because a lot of them cannot read written words, but they understand symbolism, color coding. You know, I'm thinking about a lot of our individuals that are on the autistic spectrum disorder. For our it makes sense to color coding helps. So if they get on the wrong bus, for example, and they end up in an orange area and Beacon Hill has been designated orange, they can call their support people. Say, I'm on the bus, the signage is orange. Then we know they're in Beacon Hill, and we'll say, okay, get up when you see this. We'll arrange someone to pick you up. And it gives them independence with a sense of safety. So simple things like that in a community help to give independence. You know, I really like when you're going through your demonstration, so the coding for different areas and the regional municipality is divided up in areas naturally, like we have our Abasans, our Beacon Hills, our Wood Buffalo, our downtown core, our Kimberly, Thickwood, so on. So if we could color code them, have our bus routes color coded to the same and everything, so that everything's coded the same, that's increases accessibility for some of our folks, that have developmental disabilities, and it helps them be more independent.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
And some of our people that are like vision impaired, sound and braille helps. Because I know of 3 or 4 that are independent, live independently in the community with service, some the braille or the.
Sorry, Edith, for some reason you're breaking up. The last thing I heard you say was talking about braille.
Yeah, so if we have braille or the sound indicators at corners, that's helpful for people that are vision impaired. So, because that's how they now navigate their world. So that they, if they're on the same spot everywhere, and, they can access so that they get signaled when it's safe to cross. And braille will help them if they get disoriented, which is really easy. If there's braille on the corner on the lamppost, then they can feel where they're at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go to the next slide. Pardon me. So we're looking at creating a bit of a hierarchy based on sort of prime destinations downtown. So wondering if you can maybe, in your opinion, highlight, 5 or 6 that you think would be key destinations.
It depends on what population you're looking to.
Yeah.
Right. Our young families with children, of course, it would be the venues that are the destinations that are more to their what they would access the most, right? So that would be like your Mac Island, your different parks, right? If you're looking at our younger adult population, which is our main population in Wood Buffalo, it would be like a casino, the piano for theater, for their theater venues, the sports plexus, skating things. And then for my age group, us older people, us dinosaurs, you know, it's like the Golden Year Society is important, and the theater, the library, different things like that. Right? Health centers get a little bit more important.
Yeah.
So it would be age, like they're all, everything on your list is important, but it's different age group, like would access more readily, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
depending on where you are and what your personal interest is, really.
Okay.
But I don't think, one is more important than the other. Right? Some of the ones that aren't on there is like hospital. Oh yeah, Northern Lights is there. Yeah.
Is there any on there, Etta, that you would recommend that we don't have on there?
I'm looking. I've been to every single last one of these so many times. I didn't know the cemetery was named Pioneer Cemetery. I know what the cemetery is.
A lot of people don't know that, yeah.
I didn't know the name of it.
That's the downtown one, yeah. Okay, well, if you think about it, feel free to put it in the chat.
They're pretty important. I'm surprised the courthouse isn't on here.
Oh, we have provincial courts, yeah.
Oh, is it under? Okay, so under provincial court. Yeah, I'm on my phone, so it's really small. With my old eyes, I have my computer. I left my computer at work for some reason today. Yeah, I don't think I'd take any out. Right? To tell you the truth.
Okay. So one thing we have to consider is just creating a hierarchy in the sense of wayfinding and directional, because there is only so many places that you can put on a sign. So figuring out sort of what the hierarchy would be if we can't put all of them on, what would be the most important. So
sign when you're coming into town, like a nation for town or for the neighborhood, or are you going to break it down to neighborhood signs?
I'm sorry, you broke up at the beginning.
Looking at one big sign for all of like downtown core, downtown area, or would you break it down into signs of interest, like for that area, that neighborhood?
Yeah, like, I think it would be.
Where what was there before? Should know, I've been here forever. But the one that's right across, actually it's across from my kitty corner from my office. So it's right across it's on Main Street there, right next to where the Winter Games office is now. It used to be the Red Cross office. Right across Main Street from the provincial building, the new park that's going in there. Don't know the name.
Kiam Community Park, yeah.
Yeah. So like that's one park in that neighborhood. Right. So is that what you're looking at, as one big sign or a sign for that area of what's in that, 4 or 5 block range around there?
Yeah, it's typically a range. It's kind of guiding you, like depending on where you come in from downtown. So you'd kind of look at it from the outskirts, what's sort of in that near vicinity. And then as you drive closer to something else, then we'd start adding different destinations on there. So
yeah. So it'd just be your bigger attractions that you'd be looking for signage, like for waypointing to, like Keanu Hospital.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, park, your bigger parks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I live on Smallwood Street in Timberley. I have a park behind my house, but it's a little tiny park. You wouldn't put a signage to that park, right? It's just a little tiny neighborhood park. It's not one of our bigger parks. Almost every neighborhood in Timberley has a neighborhood park attached to the 2-block radius.
Oh, okay, well, that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Right. So there are many, many parks, but then we have our bigger parks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See what you mean. Yeah. The water parks, I think, are more commonly used than our
Okay.
other parks. Yeah.
Okay, we can go to the next slide then.
Okay.
Wayfinding signage can fit into a streetscape in different ways. Sometimes it's there where you need it, and it's noticeable but not super noticeable. And sometimes it's very visually dominant, very colorful, kind of out there, or somewhere in the middle. And where do you see the Wayfinding program? Like, how would you like to see it fit in to the streetscape?
I don't know. If we had an unlimited budget as a community, I could see us, even painting the outside strips of our sidewalk. Like I know we've a lot of our crosswalks we're using for pride awareness and indigenous awareness, right? But even if the outside 2 lines in whatever area you're in, like color code our areas and color code those signs so that someone that's crossing that knows what area they're in just from the visual. Like we could do it that way pretty cheaply, and it would be really cool. I think that like major attractions like hospital, RCMP, are important. I can remember I was in Lac of Vision. I had to take my sister to Emerge, and to find their hospital was really hard. Even though they had hospital signs, you have to go in around back and circle around behind I think it was the college or something. Really hard because it was in a really place that you wouldn't think that a hospital center would be in, right? But so I'd hate that to happen to someone in Fort McMurray, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they need a hospital in a hurry, they don't know our area, and there's no signage to get there, like so. Yeah, so that's necessary for any city, any population, right? But you don't want something that a park sign that's going to take your attention away from drivers. But if they're looking for it, they could find it.
Okay.
Like in Edmonton, if you're looking for West Edmonton Mall, you can follow the signs in pretty reasonably. And they're not, you don't notice them unless you're looking for West Edmonton Mall signs to find your way in there. They're over to the side, right? That's the West Edmonton Mall symbol. You can find your way there, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I think color coding our areas would be a good, because people get confused on where they're at. I can remember when we first came here 19 years ago. My son got his first job 2 days in being here and took a bus, got on the wrong bus. He didn't know where he was, and he couldn't tell us how to find him. And he was like 15 at the time, right? Because he didn't know the area. He goes, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what bus I got on. I said, well, ask the driver. No, I don't want to do that. He couldn't tell by looking out the window where he was at because he didn't know the area, right? So color coding would be really, if we could color code somehow. Visuals, I could see that helping a lot of people.
Okay, great.
Yeah. But you don't want it to take our city tacky either. It's tacky enough with our game tags, let alone having signage. So I think
that's where Susan and her team come in hand, because they'll make it very unique to Fort McMurray and the Wood Buffalo area. So yeah.
One thing about Fort McMurray, we're very visually arty types people.
Totally. And Ed, I just wanted to mention before we keep going, because this is great conversation and great perspective on your expertise. I did want to mention that in our intro that you had missed, we are recording tonight's session to support people to be able to view the presentation afterwards, as well as to share with friends and family to see kind of what questions we're asking, as well as what wayfinding means. So I just wanted to let you know, because you had missed at the beginning, that it will be available on participate.rmwb.ca/wayfinding in the next coming days.
Yeah, that's no problem. I don't have a problem
Great.
with that.
Thank you.
Most of them are.
Back over to you, Susan.
Okay, great. We'll go to the next slide then. So we've taken the downtown area and just sectioned it off into different areas just to ask whether or not any of these areas you see as problematic or have concerns with finding your way around any of these specific places.
No, I've been here a long time.
Can you see from the eyes of, let's say, a visitor, could you potentially see some of these areas being confusing to anybody?
Not really. If you were color coding all of the municipality of Wood Buffalo, Wood Kimberly, you might have too many colors then. Right? I don't think you'd want to do more than like 10 different colors. So you may have to, like I would think, like not all of our main interests are in downtown core.
Yeah.
Like our main services in Timberlake, right? For example, right? Even on even Mac Island wouldn't be on that map because it's over further. I think, like I said, I'm on my phone, so it's really small.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's our main attraction for most venues of interest for public. I would say that would be our number one. Because everything from a concert to a gala to a, accessing swimming or sporting events to community, festival of trees, it's going to be Mac Island. Golf course, Mac Island. Right. So, yeah.
Okay.
Etta, that's a great point. We've heard from stakeholders in regards to Mac Island that support, they hold a lot of functions. I think they have Baseball Canada Cup or one of the affiliates coming back again this summer. And they had just spoken to that how many times the buses go past the Morrison access to get to Mac Island and they go over the bridge because there's no directional signage telling them where to turn. So I'm just interested to hear your perspective on, like, if you're going northbound on the highway, if from your perspective, all those different arteries, so you can turn at the roundabout to get to lower downtown by the college, then there's the hospital street, then you have where Tim Hortons is on Hardin, and then Morrison. Is there anywhere there that you feel that could be improved upon as supporting those main arteries of how to get different parts of downtown?
We could almost do it like Edmonton does for West Edmonton Mall. Right. From, every so many entrances that they know they're going the right direction, right? Because, there is only one entrance to Mac Island.
And they're saying signage that, like continuous signage that tells you you're going the right way to Mac Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Same as what a hospital sign, what you would do with a hospital sign, that type of thing, right? They can color code it for sporting event or whatever kind of event, right? Sports could be one kind of sign. It doesn't have to be color coded, but it could be one type of signage. I know when I go quadding on the trails in around Ababasca area, and you can go on an orange trail or you can take a green trail, but your trail is color coded to keep you, and it has arrows pointing which direction you should be going in to stay on the trail. So similar to that, right? Like it's just an indicator of, Mac Island is one of our main venues, right? Hospital is a main venue, right? I imagine police department's main venue. Casino, as much as we hate to admit it, it's one of our main venues. Right, so it's important to know where those kind of type of things for visitors or for even citizens that live here. Yeah. So I could see it being done the same, similar to Edmonton or some other way to identify it.
Great.
I wouldn't want to see a sign on every street corner showing them where certain destinations are. Might get a little over.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to find. Because, yeah, if you head over to Timberley, if you hit that bridge and you didn't make your turn to Mac Island, you've got a long ways before your turn comes out.
Yeah, you'd have to go up the Thickwood overpass, back down.
There. Yeah.
It's a good detour.
Unless you knew about the water treatment center, you might be able to turn your and back around. Right? But that would be it. You don't want to miss Smack Island turn off. And it's not. I never thought it not being well signed, like well signed, but it's not until you're in there a ways. Because you got to drive onto Mac Island before you actually realize you're on Mac Island. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you take it for granted. People know where it is, but if you aren't aware, you don't know you have to make that turn. It can be frustrating. Yeah. So
I can see that being very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. So in the spirit of truth and reconciliation and restoration, it will be important to incorporate Indigenous culture or storytelling in some way into the wayfinding program. Here are just a couple of examples of other ways that this has been done. The first one is a street sign at UBC, and they've incorporated translation on the street signs. Mm-hmm. And then the second example is from Australia, but it's just using artwork and iconography that kind of represents the culture in that area. So do you have any ideas of ways to incorporate the local Indigenous culture into the wayfinding program?
I would ask our Indigenous community members and get their feedback. Right? Let them lead the way. Right? That's what we do on our Truth and Reconciliation path with my agency is we speak to them to the our way. Right? And they let us know what is good for them, what's honorable for them.
That's a great point, Etta. And we are working very closely with our Indigenous and Rural department, relations department within the RMWB. So they're very supportive in regards to reaching out to rural organizations as well as Indigenous partners to gain their perspective of how we can incorporate their culture, as well as potentially language is something else that's come up a lot of how we can support the Cree and Dene language within signage.
Yeah. And I think that would
Thanks
help.
for that feedback. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide then. Here, it might be hard for you to see on your phone, but we're just showing some different types of materials.
Interest.
Sorry?
Yeah, points of interest signs.
Yeah, so it's just different styles, different materials. So we've got wood mixed with more of an aluminum. We've got, the steel and aluminum, and then we have sort of the cutouts in D there, which has the pops of color. And then some more rustic ones like in F, where it's actual larger piece of wood with a piece of aluminum over top. So just wanted to get sort of some feedback. Do you have a preference? Do you like any of these styles? Just happy to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah. Nothing too outrageous. Like in the past, we've had the fluorescent green buffalo that was kind of tacky.
Sorry, it was the forest and...
We had a fluorescent green buffalo art project once here in Fort McMurray, and we had our staging, our scaffolding project, art project. That was really tacky, in my opinion. I didn't appreciate those two art things. But then we have other ones that, like our little boxes, right, that are painted, hand painted, and they're beautiful in the pathways, right? So those are great, right? But yeah, I wouldn't want to see something that was too over tacky. Because like I say, we do have a lot of artsy people in Fort McMurray, but sometimes we get too expressional, I guess is a nice way to say it. Sometimes we can get a little over the top. Yeah, you know, it's nice, you know, like the green and brown sign is nice. It's easy on the eyes.
That's great.
Yeah. But then I'm only one citizen compared to 60,000 of us, right? If you went to the artsy world, they tell you something totally different. You can say that. I also do art too, so yeah.
Well, it's just great to get everyone's feedback and see sort of what people like and what people are drawn to.
You know, yeah. Well, I like the living buffalo sculpture. That's where is it? Where did I see that at? I think that's at Syncrude or at Snide Park. They have a living buffalo. When it was planted and it was growing, it was really nice. That's Snide.
Oh, yes, Sarika had that at
Yeah.
her entrance of her restaurant on the Snai. I don't know whatever happened to it, but it was quite beautiful.
It was beautiful when it was growing. It was, I think it was hard to keep growing because of our climate, right? And then it would have to be reseeded and planted and taken care of. It would be a lot of work, but it was nice when it was first, you know, when it was growing in the living art. But the green one that was down, where was it at? It was across from the street from Cozy Corner in that little park area there. You know where the trees are that we put the Christmas lights on? It's really pretty.
The little park there on
We had a
Franklin.
fluorescent green buffalo there for a little while. It was awful. It was supposed to represent, I think the interpretation of the piece was wood buffalo in recycling, I think was the idea behind the art, right? It just wasn't for me.
Well, it would have caught your eye.
It did catch my eye.
Green.
And the scaffolding that was supposed to light up and have smoke and with the lights, but it never did. Like down at the city center, the provincial setting, that was never a big one for me. I was glad to see that go down. But that was just me.
Oh, you're speaking about the weather catcher.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, the controversial weather catcher. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That's
awful.
no longer Susan. So
oh, okay.
It's got a long history.
It was scaffolding.
Okay. Well, we're based in Calgary, and we have a lot of conflict when it comes to public art. People don't seem to. Yeah, it's hard to come to a consensus.
Their little, you know, as their little quirks, right? It's okay. It makes us a community.
That's right.
It gives us something to talk about, whether it's positive or not.
Yeah, it invoked a reaction, so one way or another. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what it's supposed to do.
So we'll go to the next slide. We're just asking the question, why do you go downtown? Like, what brings you to downtown? Or maybe you live there, but you work downtown?
I work downtown. I used to shop downtown, but I shop more uptown now than I do downtown. Let me see, why else do I go downtown? Mac Island's downtown. Piano Theater's downtown. So I have some social events that are downtown that I get access as well. Yeah, so that's why I go downtown.
Okay.
And I have to go downtown to get to Beacon Hill where I used to live, too. So I do drive-throughs.
Okay, well, we'll go to the next slide. Wayfinding strategy should reflect the culture of Wood Buffalo, and just wondering, what are some words you would use to describe the region?
Resilient. Community.
We've heard those words a lot.
Yeah. And it's actually a really beautiful place. right? We have a lot of natural beauty here that really gets underappreciated. Right? We get lots of, because of our oil city, we get a lot of, you hear more about that than you actually do the natural beauty. Like we have beautiful walking trails and parks and natural spots, like hidden spots that nobody even realizes that are here. There's little hidden gems that you can go on, little nature adventures and discover new things all the time, right? Like we can, through Facebook groups and stuff like that, someone will say, hey, have you seen the falls? And wouldn't you know that there was a waterfall in our city? Unless you happen to know somebody that knew about it, type thing. And then you have to go on an adventure to find it, things like that. Yeah.
That's nice.
But yeah, real sense of community. We had, during the flood, I had 5 residences that were evacuated. And it included 8 adults with developmental disabilities. And because downtown core flood, you couldn't get even a pair of underwear because the stores were all closed downtown. We don't sell that stuff uptown, or bedding, or personal necessities. We put an ad out that there was those adults in this community that needed and what they needed, and within 48 hours everything was provided. Plus, and that's what Fort McMurray is.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Just resilient, community-minded people that help each other out, right? Yeah, it was the same thing when we had our fire. Very safety-minded. Yeah, that's who we are.
Wonderful. Okay, next slide. As we talked about, wayfinding can help contribute to a sense of place. Many neighborhoods have these gateway signs that are unique to the local community. In your view, how effectively do you think these signs convey the identity?
Some do a good job. Beacon Hills does a good job. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones around. Mine's a brown sign. Right?
Sorry?
I live in Prospect, right? So mine's just a sign on a green gate that says Prospect.
Okay.
Right? I'm in one of the older neighbors in Timberley. Right? So, if there's an old neighborhood in Timberley, it all depends on whose eyes you're looking through. But yeah, right. So yeah, some of them do a great job. The other ones could need a little help.
Okay.
Like Abasan, I can't remember what Abasan's sign looks like. I don't go up there very often.
Theirs is very different. It's almost vertical, and they have 2 different posts kind of going up the hill, and it's totally different branding than the ones that Susan has up here. So it's a different one, but it's right before you go in.
Yeah, that's like Beacon Hills is very different. It's almost like a lighthouse type thing in Beacon Hill. That's why I remember it, because I remember when I went up, right? So yeah. Like I said, some of them, very much like I'm thinking of the parts of, if you live around Timberley, like if say I'm going to yard, so somebody will say, oh, that's from the bird area, because all the streets are named after birds. You know which area of Timberley you're in, right? There's another area that's all trees, named after trees. So you know where that's at if you live here, right? So yeah.
Okay.
And Beacon Hill's a little difficult because everything starts with a B, right? So yeah, Beacon Hill's it's its own little place. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it can get confusing. I find communities here as well, they'll have the same sort of naming convention for all of the different crescents and streets. And sometimes it's like it's a massive community, so it can get confusing. But
yeah, in your newer areas, we've done that in Buffalo, but the older areas, no. Like downtown core, Abasan, Beacon Hill, places like that been here for a while, then it wouldn't be. And then they did by first letter, like everything started with an E or a B, which is Beacon Hill, right? So that's some of your older neighborhoods. But then up in Timberley, we have either you're a leaf or you're a bird or type thing. So we got a little more creative.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Now, this is an example of one of the historical plaques in around downtown.
Yeah.
Do you feel that these signs do a good job of reflecting local culture and history?
Yep. I appreciated those signs. I thought it was a great way of decorating the power boxes, the green power boxes downtown. And I liked when they did, when we had the, I think it was the summer games or the winter games back, they did the compass in the pavement downtown by, on the corner across from the provincial building there on Franklin. And I liked that. I thought it was very decorative. It was nicely done, you know, and it gave information. So yeah, I like the little history plaques that they have throughout downtown.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the next slide. Just talking about next steps of this program. Right now we're in the phase 1 engagement phase. In August and September, we're going to be looking at further engagement based on prototypes of different signs that we're looking at putting up. Also, we'll be looking at some engagement on different icons and terminology and overall design.
Mm-hmm.
In October, we're looking to develop the regional strategy and downtown plan for final engagement in November. And then final strategy and plan complete in December.
Busy.
Yes. And then that's the end of our presentation here. So
awesome. It was interesting.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Etta, I also put in the online survey if you wanted to participate that as well, or share with friends, colleagues.
I think I've already participated in it.
Oh, perfect.
Sure, I'll double check, but I think I did do that one.
Thank you for doing
but
that.
But I'll share it. I'm trying to think when our next, I can share it with a few of the groups I belong to too.
That would be fantastic. It's very similar to the comment or questions that Susan went through tonight for the online survey, but it's another opportunity for us to be able to gather information from people. But we will be returning
for our seniors to participate in it.
Yeah, and we've been communicating with the council appointed community for the community of aging as well. And we have a meeting scheduled with them hopefully, and the next week or so. They've reached out to us through the communications we provided to all council appointed committees. So we're hoping to meet with them, but you've given us great insight today. We'll be able to hopefully connect back with you for phase 2, as Susan had spoken to, that later this fall we'll have prototypes from all the feedback we've heard from residents, community stakeholders, and Indigenous partners, and put a visual expression on it, if you will, and really get people's feedback from that. So the public engagement actually ends tomorrow, July 20th. So if you do have people you speak to that have still feedback after that, I've put the participate email on the chat as well. That's another way people can get a hold of us. Perfect. There's the survey, there's a mapping tool where people can give pinch points of like difficult traffic issues that they've been having downtown. There's an ideas page if people have examples of other communities, what they've done in wayfinding. And then of course this video people can provide online as well. But we're very thankful for your time tonight and all the feedback you provided. So we just thank you.
A lot of our bad problem traffic areas have been addressed over the years. Like we don't have 2 hours.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Well, yes.
I can remember, there'd be a traffic jam on the bridge. So we'd just pull over and have supper if you were downtown because you weren't going to cross for the next 2 hours.
Yeah. Sometimes it was 45 minutes to get out of downtown just onto the highway.
Yeah. Yep. Many times. Yeah. It used to be a joke, right?
So we thankfully don't have those issues anymore, but
we improved.
We've improved. Thank you for joining us. And if you ever had any questions, feel free to reach out to the participate email. And thank you, Susan, for the presentation and joining us and walking through this tonight with Etta. And thank you also, Will, for being here and supporting tonight. So
Awesome.
We'll speak to you later. Thank you, Etta. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.